insignificant detail let us investigate a crime. The sum of small things helps to reveal all the secrets. There is nothing more important in an investigation than details. Based on my 45 years as a detective, I'll tell you how we investigated crimes in the past. Without special equipment, cameras, and lots of databases. We relied solely on intuition, experience, and carefully gathered evidence to uncover the truth. Hi everyone, Detective Lefebre speaks. In my decades on the force, fraud cases were often my favorite. They required patience, precision, and the ability to read between the lines. When the manager of Horizon Community Bank showed up at my office that sweltering August afternoon, I could tell this wasn't a routine theft. He was pale, jittery, and clutched a manila folder as if it held the secrets of the universe. Our books show discrepancies, he stammered. Millions are unaccounted for, but the system says everything's fine. The bank had recently undergone a significant digital transformation. Horizon had been a traditional institution for decades, but under pressure to modernize, they'd hired Zenith Systems, a company heralded as the Silicon Valley darling of fintech, to overhaul their operations. Zenith CEO, Raymond Callaway, was the picture of success. He had humble beginnings, a meteoric rise, and a reputation for being both charismatic and philanthropic. People trusted him implicitly, a fact he exploited with chilling precision. Act 1. The smoke and mirrors. The first thing I did was dig into Horizon's financials. True to the manager's word, the accounts were pristine. No unauthorized transfers, no sudden withdrawals, nothing out of the ordinary. It was as if the money had evaporated. Callaway's team had implemented a state-of-the-art banking software called Sentinel-1. It was marketed as foolproof, boasting end-to-end encryption and AI-driven fraud detection. But that didn't sit right with me. In my experience, the more someone insists something is unbreakable, the more likely they're hiding the cracks. I started by interviewing Horizon's employees. Most were thrilled with the new system, praising its efficiency. But a few IT staff mentioned something odd, periodic system lags that didn't align with usage patterns. They assumed it was routine maintenance, but the timing struck me as deliberate. When I requested Zenith's records for the project, I hit a wall. Callaway's legal team was airtight, citing proprietary software rights and confidentiality agreements. That's when I decided to approach the problem from a different angle, following the money, or in this case, the lack of it. Act 2. The Digital Mirage. I teamed up with a trusted forensic accountant, Sheila Grant. Sheila was a wizard with numbers, able to trace financial flows like a bloodhound on a scent. She discovered something curious. Over 300 small businesses associated with Horizon had experienced unexplained rounding errors in their accounts. Pennies missing here and there. So insignificant that no one noticed. When we mapped these discrepancies, a pattern emerged. The funds were funneling into accounts belonging to seemingly ordinary people. Retirees, students, blue-collar workers. It looked like an elaborate money laundering operation, but it didn't add up. Why would random individuals be involved? I decided to visit one of these account holders, a middle-aged woman named Clara Mitchell. Clara was baffled when I asked about the $4,000 deposited into her account. I thought it was a mistake, she said. I called the bank, but they said everything was fine. Clara's innocence was genuine, and her story mirrored others I interviewed. The accounts were being used as conduits without the owner's knowledge. Someone had found a way to exploit Horizon's system to create a financial mirage. Act 3. The genius behind the curtain. The breakthrough came when Sheila found a hidden subroutine in Horizon software. This wasn't just clever coding. It was a masterpiece of deception. The subroutine triggered during low-activity periods, aggregating fractions of cents from millions of transactions into the conduit accounts. From there, the funds were routed through offshore shell companies and finally into Zenith Systems shadow accounts. The architect of this scheme was Lila Brent, Zenith's lead developer. Lila was a prodigy with a reputation for being eccentric. She rarely appeared in public and preferred to communicate via encrypted emails. Her code was her signature, elegant, efficient, and nearly impossible to trace. I tracked Lila to a cabin in the Adirondacks. She lived off the grid, surrounded by books and computer monitors. Gaining her trust wasn't easy, but I played to her ego, praising her genius and hinting at a lucrative opportunity to work with the government. Over several meetings, she let her guard down. "It's not stealing," she said one evening, sipping whiskey by the fire. "It's redistribution. The banks hoard wealth while people suffer. I'm just evening the scales." Her moral justification didn't sway me, but it revealed her vulnerability. Deep down, Lila craved recognition. I used that to convince her to cooperate, offering a reduced sentence in exchange for testifying against Calloway. Act 4. The Sting. Armed with Lila's confession and forensic evidence, we set up an international sting operation. Calloway was vacationing in Monaco when Interpol agents arrested him aboard his yacht. The raid was timed perfectly. We seized his encrypted devices, which contained incriminating correspondence with Lila and records of the offshore accounts. The trial was a media spectacle. Calloway's defense team painted him as a victim of rogue employees, but Lila's testimony dismantled that narrative. She described in meticulous detail how Calloway had orchestrated the scheme, using her talents to execute his vision. In the end, Calloway was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. Lila received a reduced sentence, serving 5 years with the possibility of parole. Epilogue. Lessons learned. The Mirage Scam wasn't just about money. It was a cautionary tale about trust and hubris. Calloway's downfall wasn't his greed. It was his belief that he was untouchable. The case taught me that no system is truly foolproof. Behind every piece of technology is a human hand, capable of brilliance, but also capable of deceit. It's a lesson I carry with me, even in retirement, reminding me that justice is about persistence, adaptability, and understanding the human element behind every crime. Fraud investigations were my favorite. Meticulous puzzles that required patience, precision, and the ability to read between the lines. When Daniel Hargrove, manager of Horizon Community Bank, showed up in my office that sweltering August afternoon, his pallor told me this was no ordinary case. "Our books show discrepancies," he stammered, clutching a manila folder. "Millions are missing, but the system shows everything's fine." Horizon had recently modernized its banking system, outsourcing to Zenith Systems, a Silicon Valley tech company hailed as the leader in fintech innovation. At the helm of Zenith was Raymond Calloway, a charismatic CEO with a Horatio Alger backstory and an aura of invincibility. People trusted him implicitly, a fact he weaponized with chilling precision. It began with an innocuous detail, a discrepancy that didn't add up. Daniel Hargrove, the bank manager of Horizon Community Bank, arrived at my office with beads of sweat dotting his forehead. His fingers trembled as he laid out the problem. Over $5.3 million was missing. Horizon's financial systems, recently upgraded with SentinelOne, showed no errors. The accounts balanced perfectly, and yet their internal audits painted a very different picture. "We're bleeding money," Daniel confessed, his voice shaky. "But there's no sign of theft, no unauthorized transactions, no withdrawals. It's just gone." SentinelOne had been installed 6 months earlier as part of Horizon's modernization push, marketed by Zenith Systems as a cutting-edge solution. The software promised unbreakable encryption, seamless integration, and AI fraud detection. Zenith CEO, Raymond Calloway, had personally sold the deal to Horizon, his charm and reputation sealing the contract. But something about Daniel's story didn't sit right with me. In my years as an investigator, I'd learned that the more foolproof a system claimed to be, the more likely someone had already found a way to fool it. My first step was to interview Horizon's staff. Most employees were thrilled with SentinelOne, praising its efficiency and sleek interface. Rachel Stein, however, stood out. A sharp-eyed IT specialist with a reputation for speaking her mind. Rachel hesitated when I asked if she'd noticed anything unusual. "Well, there's the lags," she said finally. "The system stalls at odd times, early mornings, late evenings. It's not linked to traffic spikes, which is weird. Horizon's IT support says it's maintenance, but the timing doesn't make sense." Her observation piqued my interest. If the lags weren't maintenance related, they could be cover for something else, something designed to slip through unnoticed. Meanwhile, my attempts to request detailed records from Zenith were met with resistance. Their legal team, led by the unflappable Alex Dorian, stonewalled me, citing proprietary technology protections. Dorian's emails were as polished and evasive as the man himself, and I knew I wouldn't get anywhere through official channels. It was time to bring in a trusted ally. Sheila Grant, a forensic accountant with a knack for spotting anomalies others missed, joined the case. Together, we decided to trace the missing money, or the absence of it. Sheila's investigative prowess was unmatched. It took her less than a week to uncover a peculiar pattern, rounding errors across Horizon's small business accounts. Fractions of a cent were disappearing during transactions, so small they evaded detection. Individually, it's nothing, Sheila explained, her eyes narrowing as she tapped her laptop. But multiply that by millions of transactions, and we're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars vanishing in plain sight. The missing pennies were being rerouted to accounts belonging to ordinary people, names that didn't raise suspicion. Sheila's data revealed retirees, blue-collar workers, even students. On paper, the transactions looked random, but there was nothing random about the way the money moved, jumping from these conduit accounts to offshore entities. Why use these unsuspecting account holders? It added a layer of misdirection, hiding the true destination of the stolen funds. But we needed to understand if these people were victims or willing participants. The only way to find out was to talk to them. Clara Mitchell was one of the names on Sheila's list. A widow in her 50s, Clara lived in a modest house on the outskirts of town. Her life centered around her small flower shop. When I asked her about a $4,000 deposit into her account, her confusion was palpable. "I thought it was a mistake," she said, wringing her hands. "I even called Horizon. They checked and said everything was fine, so I didn't think much of it." Clara's innocence was genuine, and her story mirrored others I interviewed. These account holders had no idea their bank accounts were being used as conduits. They'd simply assumed the unusual deposits were clerical errors or windfalls. It was an ingenious system. By routing the stolen funds through accounts like Clara's, the perpetrators created the illusion of legitimacy. From there, the money disappeared into a web of offshore shell companies, effectively vanishing without a trace. The breakthrough came when Sheila uncovered the digital fingerprints of the scheme. Buried deep within Sentinel-1 was a hidden subroutine, a phantom code that activated during the unexplained system lags Rachel had noticed. "This isn't just clever," Sheila marveled. "It's a masterpiece." The subroutine worked like a siphon, aggregating fractional amounts from millions of transactions. These tiny sums were pooled into conduit accounts during low-activity periods, making them almost impossible to spot in real time. From there, the funds were funneled offshore, where they were absorbed into shell companies and vanished. The sophistication of the code was staggering. It wasn't the work of an amateur. It was the product of a genius. That genius, I learned, was Lefebre, Zenith's reclusive lead developer. Lila was a tech prodigy with a reputation for brilliance and an aversion to the spotlight. She rarely appeared in public, preferring to communicate through encrypted emails. Her code wasn't just good, it was nearly flawless. Whoever had enlisted her talents had executed one of the most seamless financial crimes I'd ever seen. But now, with the subroutine uncovered, the perfect mirage was beginning to collapse. With the hidden subroutine uncovered, the focus shifted to its creator, Lefebre. Lila was no ordinary coder. She was a prodigy, celebrated in tech circles for her ability to solve complex problems with elegance and efficiency. Her reputation as a reclusive genius made her a mystery to most, even within Zenith systems. She had reportedly designed Sentinel-1's architecture herself, but digging deeper revealed something curious. She hadn't been seen at Zenith headquarters in over a year. Officially, Lila was on sabbatical, but rumors suggested otherwise. Former Zenith employees hinted that Lila had clashed with Raymond Calloway over the direction of the company. She didn't care about profits, one source said. She wanted to make something perfect. Calloway just wanted results. This tension added a layer of intrigue. If Lila had left Zenith, was she still complicit in the fraud? Or had her work been co-opted by someone else? Either way, her subroutine was the key to the scheme, and I needed to find her. Tracking Lila wasn't easy. She had erased nearly all traces of her personal life, and Zenith's legal team refused to provide contact information. But Sheila's dogged research uncovered an obscure tax record for a property in the Adirondack Mountains, registered under a pseudonym linked to Lila's early projects. It was a long shot, but it was my only lead. The cabin was tucked deep in the woods, surrounded by dense pines and far from the nearest road. It was minimalist yet high-tech. Solar panels on the roof, satellite dishes outside, and a faint blue glow emanating from the windows at night. Inside, Lila lived in a world of screens and code, her existence as isolated as her digital presence. Approaching her required strategy. Lila was known for her distrust of strangers, and a direct confrontation could shut her down. Instead, I played to her ego, leaving a carefully worded letter on her doorstep. It read, "Your work is extraordinary, but it's been used to commit a crime. Help me uncover the truth, and I'll ensure your genius is recognized, not just exploited." It took 3 days before Lila responded. When I returned to the cabin, she was waiting on the porch, arms crossed, her sharp eyes scanning me as if calculating every risk. She wasn't what I expected. Early 30s, dressed in a hoodie and jeans, with hair pulled into a messy bun. She looked more like a grad student than the mastermind behind Sentinel-1. "I don't talk to cops," she said flatly, her voice edged with distrust. "I'm not here to arrest you," I replied. "I'm here because your work has been hijacked. Someone's used it to steal millions. If you didn't authorize this, you should know what's happening." Her expression softened, just a fraction. Over the next few visits, I chipped away at her defenses, complimenting her brilliance while hinting at the potential consequences of staying silent. Lila began to open up, revealing a mixture of pride in her code and anger at how it had been weaponized. "They're using my system?" she asked one evening, sipping whiskey by the fire. "Callaway said it was just for efficiency testing. I didn't think." She stopped herself, the realization sinking in. Lila had created the tools, but she hadn't pulled the trigger. Once Lila started talking, the pieces began to fall into place. She admitted to designing the subroutine at Callaway's request, believing it was meant to test Sentinel-1's capacity for high-volume transactions. "It was a challenge," she said, almost wistfully. "He told me to make something that could handle billions of micro-calculations without detection. I didn't ask why." When Callaway saw the potential of her subroutine, he used it to create the Mirage Scam. By funneling fractions of cents from millions of transactions into conduit accounts, he turned Sentinel-1 into the perfect cover for a massive money laundering operation. Lila, oblivious to the scheme's true purpose, had left Zenith shortly after completing the project, frustrated by Callaway's greed and control. "I didn't know he'd use it like this," she insisted. "I just wanted to build something perfect." Her guilt was evident, but so was her anger. Callaway had exploited her genius, and now she wanted justice. With Lila on my side, I had a crucial ally and a potential witness. With Lila's cooperation, Sheila and I unraveled the financial web that Callaway had spun. The stolen funds didn't sit in the conduit accounts for long. Instead, they were funneled through a series of offshore shell companies registered in tax havens like the Cayman Islands and Luxembourg. Each shell company was layered with proxies, fake directors, and encrypted transactions designed to obscure the true beneficiaries. Sheila's forensic skills uncovered the pattern. "It's like a laundering factory," she explained. "The money moves so fast, it's almost impossible to trace. But the endpoints always lead back to Zenith." One particular account caught our attention. A shadow account labeled Zeta, 17, tied to a holding company controlled by Callaway's inner circle. The account's transactions included luxury purchases, yachts, private jets, and real estate in Monaco, confirming that the stolen funds were financing Callaway's lavish lifestyle. With this evidence in hand, we began preparing for the next phase, bringing Callaway down. But we needed one final piece to seal the case: Callaway's direct involvement. That meant setting a trap. The evidence against Raymond Callaway was damning, but we needed irrefutable proof of his involvement to ensure a conviction. With Lila Brent's testimony and Sheila Grant's forensic trail, we had a strong case, but Callaway was slippery. His wealth and influence allowed him to maintain plausible deniability. To bring him down, we devised a sting operation to catch him red-handed. Lila, now fully cooperating, suggested a way to lure Callaway out of his fortress-like bubble. "He can't resist flaunting his brilliance," she said. If we bait him with something that looks like a challenge, he'll take the risk. We set the trap using a fabricated offshore account linked to a fictional new investment opportunity. The idea was simple: entice Calloway into accessing the account, where we'd intercept his communications and financial activity. Lila's knowledge of his habits and ego proved invaluable in crafting the perfect bait. Calloway's lifestyle of excess made him a moving target. At the time, he was vacationing in Monaco, splitting his time between luxury casinos and his 120-foot yacht, the Echelon. Surveillance teams tracked his movements, confirming he was living off the stolen funds, but he remained cautious about direct involvement in the operations. The opportunity came when Calloway logged into the fabricated account during a high-stakes poker game aboard the Echelon. Interpol agents monitoring the session intercepted an encrypted email from Calloway to one of his shell companies. The email contained explicit instructions to move stolen funds into a new account, a digital smoking gun that tied him directly to the scam. The sting operation culminated in Calloway's arrest, coordinated with Interpol and local authorities in Monaco. Agents boarded the Echelon early in the morning, catching him off guard as he reviewed spreadsheets in the yacht's lounge. His initial reaction was defiance. "This is a mistake," he insisted, his trademark charisma faltering under the weight of the evidence. The raid yielded a treasure trove of incriminating material: encrypted hard drives, offshore account records, and personal correspondence with Lila revealed the full extent of his involvement. Among the files was a document labeled Sentinel Expansion Plan, outlining how he intended to scale the scam globally. Calloway was extradited to the U.S., where he faced charges of fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. The media frenzy surrounding his arrest turned him into a symbol of corporate greed and hubris, his carefully curated public image shattered overnight. The trial of Raymond Calloway was a spectacle, attracting national and international attention. The courtroom was packed with reporters, former Zenith employees, and victims of the scam. Calloway's defense team, led by the formidable Victoria Hale, argued that he was a scapegoat for the actions of rogue employees. They painted him as a visionary entrepreneur betrayed by those he trusted. But the prosecution, armed with Lila's testimony and Sheila's forensic analysis, dismantled that narrative piece by piece. Lila took the stand, her composure a stark contrast to Calloway's attempts at charm. She detailed how Calloway had manipulated her into creating the subroutine, her voice steady as she recounted his promises and deceit. "He called it a test," she said, "but he knew exactly what he was doing. He didn't just exploit my code, he exploited my trust." The prosecution also presented the intercepted email from the sting operation, tying Calloway directly to the movement of stolen funds. The jury's expressions grew darker with each piece of evidence, their initial skepticism giving way to outrage. After weeks of testimony, deliberation lasted only 2 days. The jury returned a unanimous verdict: guilty on all counts. Calloway was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison, with significant financial penalties aimed at compensating Horizon's losses. His empire crumbled, and Zenith Systems declared bankruptcy within months of his conviction. Lila, though complicit in the scam, received a reduced sentence for her cooperation. She was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison with the possibility of parole after 3. During her final statement, she expressed remorse. "I wanted to build something extraordinary. I didn't realize how easily extraordinary things can be corrupted." For Sheila and me, the verdict marked the end of a long and complex investigation. Horizon Community Bank began to rebuild its reputation, compensating victims like Clara Mitchell and implementing safeguards to prevent future breaches. Raymond Calloway's conviction sent shockwaves through the financial and tech worlds. Zenith Systems, once hailed as a trailblazer in fintech, crumbled under the weight of lawsuits and public outrage. Former clients accused the company of negligence, and several high-ranking executives faced investigations into their roles in the Mirage Scam. For Horizon Community Bank, the fallout was severe but not fatal. The bank issued public apologies and committed to compensating affected customers. They severed ties with Zenith Systems and replaced Sentinel One with a simpler, transparent system developed by a local cybersecurity firm. However, trust was harder to rebuild. Customers like Clara Mitchell voiced lingering skepticism, hesitant to rely on digital systems after the breach. To restore confidence, Horizon held public forums and engaged independent auditors to ensure their operations were airtight. Forensic accountant Sheila Grant emerged as one of the heroes of the case. Her meticulous analysis of the offshore accounts was instrumental in unraveling the scam. Media outlets hailed her as the bloodhound of banking fraud, and she was invited to speak at cybersecurity and financial conferences. Despite the acclaim, Sheila remained grounded. This wasn't just about numbers, she told me after the trial. It was about people. Every missing penny affected someone's life. Sheila's work not only exposed the mechanics of the Mirage scam, but also set new standards for how financial institutions investigate and prevent fraud. Her techniques were adopted in training programs, ensuring her legacy would outlive the scandal. Lefebre served 3 years of her 5-year sentence, earning parole for her cooperation and good behavior. During her time in prison, she participated in rehabilitation programs and mentored other inmates, teaching them coding and digital literacy. Upon her release, Lila vowed to use her talents for ethical purposes. She joined a cybersecurity nonprofit focused on protecting vulnerable institutions from fraud, working to atone for her role in the scam. Though her past would always follow her, she became a vocal advocate for accountability in tech. When I spoke to her a year after her release, she admitted, "I'll never forgive myself for what I helped create. But if I can stop it from happening again, maybe I can sleep at night." Horizon Community Bank slowly rebuilt its reputation, though scars from the scandal lingered. The new system they implemented prioritized transparency, allowing customers to monitor transactions in real time. Community outreach programs helped repair the bank's relationship with its clients, particularly small businesses like those targeted in the scam. Horizon also established a fund for victims of financial fraud, naming it after Clara Mitchell, whose case had brought the Mirage scam into focus. For Clara, the gesture was bittersweet. "I didn't ask for recognition," she said during the fund's launch event. "But if my story helps others, maybe something good can come from all this." As I look back on the Mirage scam, I'm struck by its complexity, not just in its mechanics but in the human stories behind it. Raymond Calloway's hubris, Lefebre's moral conflict, and Sheila Grant's relentless pursuit of justice all formed a tapestry of ambition, greed, and redemption. The case became a landmark in fraud prevention, proving that no system is truly foolproof. Behind every line of code is a human hand, capable of brilliance but also susceptible to corruption. For me, it was a reminder that even the most sophisticated schemes leave a trail, and justice is about finding the human element within the chaos. The Mirage scam wasn't just about missing millions. It was a cautionary tale about trust, ambition, and the consequences of unchecked power. Calloway's downfall showed that even the most untouchable figures can be held accountable, while Lila's journey revealed the potential for redemption when someone chooses to do the right thing. If you like this story and want to watch more stories by Detective Lefebre, please subscribe to my channel and leave a comment below. Remember, the truth is in details.